I woke up to the sound of gnawing. My whole body hurt, but I didn't want to move or open my eyes. The pain didn't bother me much. I was actually looking forward to it ending. I was so tired. Then I felt small hands lifting my head. A cold glass touched my lips, and a little voice said, "Mommy, drink water." I snapped my eyes open and jumped up. The glass fell and shattered. A boy around 9 or 10 stood beside me, looking hurt. I stared at him, completely confused. Wasn't I supposed to be dead, being eaten by zombies? And my little Xiaojin, hadn't he already died in my arms? I grabbed him and hugged him tight. He bumped his nose on my chest and got a nosebleed, but I barely reacted. After living through the apocalypse, a nosebleed was nothing. I calmly stuffed some tissue in his nose and wiped the blood off his face. Then the door opened, and a round little head peeked in. It was Xiaoyu, my younger son. He ran to me and said, "Mommy, you're finally awake." I was so scared. My mind cleared instantly. I held both my boys close. I checked my phone and saw the date. That's when it hit me. I had been reborn. Sent back in time, like those novels I used to read before the end of the world. At first, I didn't want this. I didn't want to go through the apocalypse again. Surviving it alone with 2 kids had been the hardest thing imaginable. But then I looked at my children, alive and warm, and I thought, everything is different now. My family is still here.
There's still time.
While I was holding them, my phone rang. It was a video call from my husband, Lu Feng. When I saw his face on the screen, I suddenly started crying and couldn't stop. He looked worried. He knew I almost never cried. I used to always tell him everything was fine, even when it wasn't. This time I didn't pretend. I told him I had a fever and that my head and body hurt. He was surprised by my tone. I hadn't been soft with him like that since we were dating. He told me to take medicine, drink hot water, and rest. He said he'd ask his boss for leave and take the train home that night. After he hung up, I smiled. Lu Feng and I met in college and fell in love naturally. We got married, had kids, and our relationship was always stable. The passion from our early days had settled into something quieter, but we both always put family first. And now, with this second chance, I intended to do things differently. I watched my boys clean up the broken glass by themselves and felt proud. Raising them alone was hard, but it paid off. Their grandparents loved them too much and spoiled them with no limits, so I had sent them back home and handled everything myself. Now, though, I needed help. I called my in-laws and asked them to come stay with the kids. They were shocked. I never asked for help, but agreed right away. Lu Feng had already told them I was sick. I checked my phone again. July 26th, about 2 weeks before everything ends. Here's what happened in my past life. The temperature kept rising until it nearly hit 60 degrees Celsius. Then boiling rain fell for 2 months straight. The water was hot enough to burn skin. Flooding swallowed the city. My apartment was on high ground, but water still reached the 4th floor. Lower areas were buried under 5 or 6 stories of water. After the rain stopped, zombies appeared. It started at the hospital, feverish patients suddenly attacking people like animals. It spread fast, and the apocalypse began. I'd survived the first months okay, because I'm an online shopping addict and had stockpiled tons of food. But once the power died, the frozen food spoiled. We lived on snacks until those ran out too. The worst part was losing contact with everyone. When electricity and phone networks went down, I was completely alone with 2 small children, no food, and no one to talk to. I still don't know how I made it to the survivor base. But that's the past life. Now my phone buzzed. Lu Feng sent his train ticket. He'd arrive at 2 a.m. When he asked if I'd eaten, I realized the kids hadn't had dinner. I walked out and found Xiaojin at the stove, tissue still in his nose, boiling dumplings for us. Xiaoyu was playing quietly in the living room. Standing there watching them, I finally felt truly alive again. My brother-in-law Li sent me my in-laws' travel details. They live in a small county town with no high-speed trains, so the bus trip would take at least 10 hours. I asked Li to drive them here instead. I've always been a little intimidated by him. He's 2 years older than my husband, never married, never held a real job, and hangs around with shady people. My in-laws argue about him every year. But honestly, he's better than he looks. He's generous with the kids, good to his parents, and once gave us 300,000 yuan without hesitation when we needed a car. That's when I realized he's someone who truly cares about family. This time, I wanted him here too. In my past life, our family was split across 3 places, over 1,000 kilometers apart. When the apocalypse hit and all transportation stopped, we never saw each other again. I can't let that happen twice. After dinner and getting the kids to bed, I lay down and touched the jade bracelet on my wrist. My mother left it to me when she died. In my previous life, it broke when someone pushed me during a supply run over a year into the apocalypse. My blood accidentally dripped on the broken pieces, and I discovered it contained a magical space inside, a place where things could be stored and crops could be grown. But because it was broken, the space was small and damaged, and by then supplies were too scarce to make good use of it. Now the bracelet is still whole. I pricked my finger and let blood drip onto it. The blood slowly sank in. The bracelet turned transparent, then disappeared completely. I closed my eyes, focused my mind, and suddenly I was standing in an open area the size of a football field. In the center was a small house, about 100 square meters, simple but finished with white walls, running water, and electricity. No furniture, but that's fine. Near the kitchen, I found a door leading to an underground room the same size as the house, with high ceilings. I tested it by sending a cup of water there with my mind. It worked as a storage room. Outside the house was dark soil for farming. I've never grown anything in my life, so I'll need to buy seeds and experiment. Near the edge of the land was a small pond fed by a spring, surrounded by mist. The water looked clean, but I wasn't brave enough to drink it yet. The important thing is this. In my past life, we nearly died from lack of water after everything shut down. Now I have a water source. And with 2 weeks before the apocalypse, I have time to fill this space with enough supplies to keep my whole family alive. Back in my room, I tested the storage space and discovered something amazing. Time stands still inside it. A cup of hot water I'd sent there was still hot when I brought it back, while an identical cup left in the room had gone cold. This means anything I store won't expire or spoil. That changes everything. I figured out how the space works. There are 4 areas: farmland, a pond, a small house, and the underground storage. I can physically enter the first 3, but the storage only works through my mind. I also tested whether other people could go in. I moved my sleeping children, bed and all, into the space, and they stayed peacefully asleep. That's incredible. It means I can keep my family safe inside if I need to. Looking at little Xiao Yu's round face, I started crying. In my past life, he only lived to 3.5. A tornado took him while we were traveling to the survivor base. This time, I won't let that happen. I moved the kids back to their room and tried to plan. My husband would probably only take a few days off work. Luli would likely leave the next day. How could I convince everyone to stay? I'm terrible at lying. I'm the most straightforward person in this family. Whatever I'm thinking shows right on my face. Before I figured anything out, I heard the door lock open. It was 3 a.m. Lu Feng was home. He's tall, with long legs and a sharp face that looked tired from the trip. He frowned when he saw me up. "You're sick. Why aren't you sleeping?" Before he finished talking, I ran over and jumped into his arms, wrapping myself around him. He caught me and joked that I hadn't been this affectionate in a long time. Then he felt tears on his neck. Once he sat us down on the couch and told me not to worry, I completely broke down. All the pain from my past life came flooding out. I sobbed and said things like, "Where were you? Why did it take so long? I'm so tired." I couldn't protect the children. He got serious fast. In all our years together, since we started dating at 18, he'd never seen me cry like this. He knows me as someone fierce and stubborn, the kind of person who argues until she wins and never shows weakness. So he knew something was really wrong. He just held me and stroked my back, waiting patiently. He didn't push me to explain. Sitting there in the quiet, I could feel how much this man loves his family. He's worked hard, 2 houses, 2 cars, 2 sons by his mid-30s. He's always had chances to stray, but never did. He told me once that he fell for me the first time he saw me in college, walking past his dorm. One day, he just grabbed my hair as I walked by. That was how we started. Eventually, I cried myself to sleep in his arms, still mumbling, "Where are you?" He carried me to bed, lay down beside me, pulled me close, and whispered, "I'm right here." When I woke up, it was already midday. For a few minutes I just lay there, still feeling like everything was a dream. I could hear my kids laughing in the living room, mixed with Lu Feng's voice. Then I remembered last night, jumping into his arms, sobbing like a child. I was embarrassed. In my entire past life, even through the worst of the apocalypse, I only cried once, when Xiaoyu was taken. After that, I never shed a tear in front of anyone again. And now here I was, crying over everything. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were swollen like walnuts. But my face was young and smooth, with no scars or dirt. I almost cried again just seeing that. In the apocalypse, we sometimes went weeks without water to wash our faces. Lu Feng came in and made me wash up and eat first. He'd cooked rice noodles with an egg on top, his specialty. The moment I tasted it, I felt like a real person again. 2 years of barely eating in my past life made a simple bowl of noodles feel like heaven. After I finished, he sat beside me and waited. I took a deep breath and told him we needed to talk. I warned him it would sound crazy, maybe even insane, but I needed him to hear me out. Then I told him everything. The extreme heat, the boiling rain, the floods, the zombies losing contact with family, Xiaoyu being swept away by a tornado, and surviving alone with the kids for 2 years until I died. When I finished, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He asked if maybe I'd been reading too many novels and just had a vivid dream. That made me furious. I jumped up and started shouting. "You don't understand." I felt the boiling rain on my skin. I felt the sun burning me. I saw what zombies look like, and I don't watch horror movies, so how could I imagine that? We've never even had a typhoon here, but I felt a tornado with my own body. These aren't things I could get from reading a book. I kept going, my voice getting louder. "You don't know what it was like being trapped in this apartment with 2 hungry, crying children. You don't know how scared I was when zombies came at me. You don't know how helpless I felt when the wind took Xiaoyu. You weren't there. I didn't even know where you were." I slid down against the cabinet and curled up on the floor, hugging my knees. "You don't know how hard it was," I whispered. "Where were you?" Lu Feng stared at me, completely shocked. The kids ran in, but he sent them to their room to play. Then he knelt down and held me, even though he clearly didn't believe a word I'd said. I can't blame him. Natural disasters he could accept, but zombies? It sounds like fiction. We've had serious viruses before, even lockdowns, but nothing like what I described. How could he possibly believe me? I calmed down in Lu Feng's arms and started thinking clearly again. He told me he believed me, and that meant everything. What finally convinced him was when I described killing a man. I told him how someone had attacked Xiao Jin, kicked my little boy so hard he flew through the air. I grabbed the fruit knife from the kitchen counter and stabbed the man right in the heart. The blood splashed on my face, still warm. I described it so calmly and clearly that Lu Feng knew I couldn't have imagined it. He held my hand and said he needed time to process everything, but he believed me. He told me to rest and said we'd make a plan once my in-laws arrived. I went back to my room and kicked myself. I'd spent all that energy shouting and crying to convince him when I could have just shown him the magical space. I really am an idiot sometimes. I slept until 5 in the afternoon. When I came out, my in-laws were on the couch playing with the kids, and Luli was sitting nearby playing games on his phone. My mother-in-law rushed over to check on me. I told her I was fine, just tired. At dinner, I was so hungry I ate 3 bowls of rice before I noticed everyone staring at me in shock. I blushed and mumbled that I was a little hungry. Lu Feng brought me soup and we finished the meal. Afterward, Lu Feng gathered everyone in the living room. He sent the kids to their room and tried to explain everything I'd told him: the heat, the boiling rain, the floods, the zombies. When he finished, nobody spoke for a long time. My mother-in-law gently asked if maybe my fever had caused some kind of side effect in my brain. I just smiled. I'd expected this. Instead of arguing, I held up my glass cup and said, "Watch closely." Then I made it vanish into my storage space. Everyone's eyes went wide. I was wearing a short-sleeved shirt with nothing to hide behind. The cup simply disappeared from my bare hand. My mother-in-law clutched her chest. My father-in-law opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Luli jumped to his feet. Lu Feng was less shocked since I'd mentioned supernatural abilities earlier. He frowned and asked, "I thought you said you never developed any powers." Luli immediately jumped in. "Powers? What do you mean? What's going on?" Lu Feng had only given them the basic outline.
There was still a lot more to explain.
I brought the cup back from my space and set it on the coffee table. My mother-in-law, Lin Shui, grabbed it and studied it. Just an ordinary glass, nothing special. Then I touched the coffee table and made the whole thing vanish. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Everyone stared at the empty spot in the middle of the living room. I brought the table back and explained that my power came from my mother's jade bracelet. Luli asked me to tell them everything in detail. He said he believed me, and that my experience was the most valuable information we had. If we wanted to survive, we needed every detail I could remember. So, I told them the full story from the beginning of the disaster to the end. The hunger, the danger, the killing I had to do to protect my children, losing Xiaoyu in the tornado, and finally dying in a pile of zombies. When I finished, I apologized to Lu Feng for not being able to save either child. He pulled me close, his eyes red, and said I'd done more than enough. My mother-in-law was sobbing. Even my quiet father-in-law was choking up. Luli was silent for a long time before saying, "You were incredible." Then Luli got down to business. He tapped the table and said we needed to start preparing immediately. Lu Feng agreed. I'd given them the warning, and now it was everyone's job to act on it. My in-laws volunteered to help however they could. Luli's first question was smart. How big is the space, and what are its limits? I told them everything: the farmland, the water source, the house, and most importantly, the underground storage room, where time stands still. Anything stored there stays exactly as it was forever. About 100 square meters, with high ceilings. Everyone's face lit up. Then I hesitated before adding one more thing. I'd tested bringing the kids inside, and it worked. Living people can enter the space. The room went completely quiet. I could see them all thinking the same thing. Could they go in too? But nobody dared ask. It was my space, and they didn't want to seem greedy. Even Lu Feng stayed silent. I shook my head and told them not to be like that. I called them all here and shared everything because I trust them completely. Lu Feng said I shouldn't have revealed that the space can hold people. It was too dangerous for others to know. My mother-in-law agreed and said I should have kept that secret, or, at most, told only Lu Feng. She called me too trusting. I almost cried hearing that. I told her I never planned to hide anything from them, not from my in-laws, not from Luli. We're family, and this time we're surviving together. Luli was surprised that I trusted him so much. We'd barely spoken over the years. I told everyone that during those 2 awful years in the apocalypse, my biggest hope was that my family would find me. I was absolutely certain that if we'd been together, things wouldn't have been so hard. Their love for me and the kids had never wavered, and I felt that deeply, including from Luli. He leaned back and smiled. My in-laws exchanged a look too. I knew there had been tension between us about how to raise the kids, but they'd always treated me like a daughter. Now they realized I never disliked them. I just didn't want them spoiling the boys. Then I brought up my concern. I could bring Xiao Jin and Xiaoyu into the space, but I wasn't sure about anyone else. They might be limited because my children share my blood. Luli figured it out immediately. My mother-in-law suggested testing with Lu Feng. I grabbed his hand and tried, but nothing happened. The space only accepts people related to me by blood. Everyone was disappointed, but Luli stayed practical. He said we should buy farming equipment, so I wouldn't have to work the land alone. And the children being safe inside the space was already a huge advantage. Then we counted our money. I had about 1.2 million yuan in savings, plus my school district apartment could sell for around 3 million. Lu Feng had about 1 million saved. Luli had 2 million. My mother-in-law was shocked and demanded to know where he got it. He just grinned and said, investments. My in-laws had around 500,000 in retirement savings, plus a house worth maybe 200,000 to 300,000. Altogether, about 7 million yuan. Not a fortune, but enough to stockpile basics. I mentioned that after the apocalypse starts, we could also do zero-cost shopping, taking supplies from abandoned places. My mother-in-law was horrified. That's stealing. Luli scoffed and said there won't be any laws in the apocalypse. She smacked him. I explained more gently that once the floods come, all those supplies would be ruined anyway. Better we save them than let them go to waste. She accepted that for me but glared at Luli, saying he was just naturally dishonest. Luli rolled his eyes and told his mother, I get it now. Lu Feng and I were adopted. Zhou Yuan is your real child. My father-in-law quietly added, we did always want a daughter. Both brothers went speechless. I cleared my throat and said, so, should we talk about what to buy with our 7 million? Luli grabbed some paper and started making lists. He said we needed to work fast. It was a race against time. We organized everything around 4 categories: clothing, food, shelter, and transportation. Food was the top priority, including water and medicine. My father-in-law added seeds to the list. With my space, we could grow food long-term instead of just eating through our supplies. Nobody knows how long the apocalypse will last, and the kids are still young. I pointed out something important. We also needed weapons and home security. There's a saying, my neighbor stockpiles food, I stockpile guns, so my neighbor becomes my warehouse. We wouldn't rob anyone, but we couldn't afford to be robbed either. Luli took charge of weapons and said he had connections. Nobody questioned it. Then we divided the work. I would rent a warehouse, sell both apartments to raise cash, order supplies online, handle clothing for the family, and move everything into my space. Luli would handle weapons, transportation, and go back to his hometown for some business. My in-laws would buy all the food basics: rice, oil, salt, seeds. They're experts at grocery shopping and can bargain like nobody else. Lu Feng warned his dad to keep his mom from haggling too long since we're short on time.
She wasn't happy about that.
Lu Feng would get medicine through a business contact, try to get medical equipment, and handle reinforcing our apartment's security. Luli also said he wanted to bring a few trusted friends to join us. He promised not to reveal anything about my rebirth or the space. My mother-in-law panicked, but Lu Feng told his brother he trusted him. Just don't betray that trust. Luli nodded seriously and said family is his bottom line. After everyone went to bed, I stayed up shopping online. I ordered frozen foods the kids love: pizza, steak, sausages, dumplings. I bought milk powder for Xiaoyu and textbooks through high school for Xiaojin, plus educational books and tablets for downloading online courses. I ordered skincare products, sanitary supplies, shoes, socks, and clothes for everyone. Thinking about possible extreme cold after the extreme heat, I ordered expensive ski suits and outdoor gear, tents, equipment, everything I could find. I shopped until 3 a.m. While brushing my teeth, I realized I hadn't ordered toiletries yet, so I went back and bought boxes of shampoo, soap, toothpaste, towels, every brand I could think of, in bulk. The next morning, everyone was already out working before I woke up. I ate breakfast and called my real estate contact. I rented a warehouse nearby, nothing fancy, just a cover so I could move things into my space without being seen. I also listed both apartments for sale, priced below market for a quick deal. Around mid-morning, workers showed up to install a heavy-duty security door and bulletproof glass windows. Lu Feng had arranged that. I also had them move the old door to the stairwell entrance on our floor, adding an extra layer of protection. The workers hesitated since it's technically against building rules, but I paid extra and told them the neighboring apartment was ours too. In truth, that unit has never been occupied. Wasn't my past life either. The real estate agent worked fast. By noon, he had a buyer for the school district apartment. The buyer loved it, didn't haggle, and paid half up front. 1.5 million yuan landed in my account. I ordered warehouse shelving so I could organize supplies properly inside my storage space. Then my in-laws called. Their first batch had arrived at the warehouse. I rushed over and found several trucks worth of rice, flour, and cooking oil waiting. Stacking it all into my space took over an hour. I discovered that with practice, I could absorb larger amounts at once. My mental power seemed to grow stronger the more I used it. While waiting for the next delivery, I kept shopping online. Tissues, wet wipes, toilet paper, bedding, pillows, cleaning supplies, disinfectant, backpacks. The list never ended. Shopping felt almost addictive. Then the vegetable trucks arrived. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, radishes, pumpkins, truckloads of them. My in-laws had practically emptied the entire market. I just stared at it all, overwhelmed. When I got home, my in-laws had dinner ready. My mother-in-law's cooking is amazing. Lu Feng clearly inherited his skills from her. She told me they plan to visit farms in the countryside tomorrow to find better produce and real seeds, since market vegetables weren't good enough. My father-in-law agreed, saying farmers keep the best seeds for themselves. I didn't argue. They know far more about this than I do. Lu Feng came home, looking tired. He and Luli had been out all day working on medicine and weapons. Apparently neither was easy to get. Then my mother-in-law mentioned a surprise. She'd bought 2 little white rabbits at the market for me to test whether my space could hold live animals. The kids were already on the balcony feeding them lettuce. Xiao Jin corrected everyone's language. Apparently rabbits shouldn't be called male and female in Chinese, but use a different term. He was so serious about it that even my father-in-law immediately changed his wording. My in-laws have zero resistance to anything their grandchildren say. Lu Feng told the kids I was going to do a magic trick. I reminded Xiao Jin to never tell anyone outside the family about this. He nodded and said he already understood. Family business stays private. That boy is wise beyond his age. I reached out, touched the rabbit cage, and it vanished. Xiao Yu jumped up and cheered. Xiao Jin's eyes went wide. My mother-in-law clapped her hands excitedly and immediately started planning. If live animals work, she said, we should get chickens for eggs, plus pigs, cows, sheep, ducks. Xiao Jin needs good nutrition while he's growing. My father-in-law added that we should put fish in the pond since Xiao Yu loves fish. Everything with those two always comes back to the grandchildren. I told them to wait a couple of days before buying livestock. I needed to set up the space first. Fences, separate ponds, organized areas. The thought of chickens, ducks, and pigs running loose in there made me want to explode. Lu Feng said I should stay home the next few days, focus on organizing the space, and just handle warehouse pickups. He'd go buy the building materials I needed. Luli strolled in just as my mother-in-law was complaining about him being late. She grumbled that she can't even talk behind someone's back without them showing up. I deliberately left the rabbits inside the space during dinner. Last time, I'd only kept the kids in there for 2 minutes. The rabbits would be my test. I wanted to see if living things could stay inside for longer, without any problems. After dinner, I took the rabbits out of my space. They were perfectly fine, hopping around like nothing happened. That confirmed it. Living things can stay inside safely. Luli had a smart idea before Lu Feng left. He suggested we seal off the rooftop by installing an iron gate at the stairwell and covering the roof with blast-proof glass. That way we'd have a protected outdoor area, useful for things like solar panels later. My mother-in-law worried about neighbors complaining, but Luli said the gate could wait and the roof covering would benefit everyone in the building. Luli told me he'd need my help in a couple of days to store some things, meaning weapons. I told him I'd prepare a separate area in my space. My father-in-law warned him to be careful since these things are illegal and we can't afford trouble before the apocalypse even starts. I agreed, but Luli promised he knew what he was doing. I transferred the $1.5 million from the apartment sale to my in-laws' account for their shopping. My mother-in-law was shocked at the amount, but I told her what they're buying is our family's survival foundation. That motivated her. She immediately dragged my father-in-law to plan their next purchases. I sent Lu Feng my list for the space: fencing, a water pump, shovels, tools, a small digging machine, and a small farming machine. A big tractor wasn't realistic with our budget. The thought of farming by hand made my head hurt. I've never farmed in either of my lives. Then I noticed the kids eating ice cream and had another idea. I ordered ice cream in bulk, plus a dozen large ice-making machines. When the power goes out during extreme heat, ice with a fan could replace air conditioning. I added dozens of fans, air coolers, dehumidifiers, and dryers. I also ordered large battery storage units, so we could have portable electricity. The online store's customer service was stunned by my order sizes. I also ordered heaters for winter, just in case extreme cold follows the extreme heat. Then I switched to food delivery apps. I ordered dozens of milk teas, fried skewers, barbecue, burgers, fries, fried chicken, all our favorites. I told restaurants it was for a company party and had everything delivered to the parking garage, where I pulled my car into a camera blind spot and absorbed each delivery into my space. By 11 p.m., I was exhausted. Lu Feng and Lu Li still weren't home. The kids were asleep. I reminded my in-laws to sleep early, since they had a big day tomorrow. Back in my space, I arranged the furniture from the old apartment. I discovered I could move heavy objects with my mind instead of carrying them physically, but it drained my mental energy fast. My head throbbed painfully after a
while.
I sat on the couch to rest and found myself staring at the spring by the pond, wondering if that water might have some special purpose beyond just drinking. I couldn't resist. I scooped some water from the spring and took a tiny sip. Almost immediately, my headache from overusing my mental powers faded. I took a bigger gulp and felt even better. This water could restore mental energy. I tested it carefully. Water straight from the spring worked, but water from the pond it flowed into didn't. The spring's power seemed to disappear once the water mixed into the pond. I filled several cups and placed them in different spots. One in the frozen time storage room, one in the space's house, and one outside in my bedroom.
I wanted to see how long the effect lasted.
When Lu Feng and Lu Li got home around 2 a.m., I gave them each a cup. Both drank without hesitation and immediately perked up. Lu Li asked if it could improve our bodies long-term or just work like an energy drink. I said I didn't know yet. Lu Feng pulled me back to the bedroom before we could discuss further. It took me a moment to realize why he was in such a hurry. He'd been away for 6 months. Let's just say he had a lot of pent-up energy, especially after that magic water. Afterward, he jokingly reminded me to stockpile condoms. I was embarrassed, but he had a point. In the apocalypse, those things could be traded for food. I went online and ordered thousands of boxes from dozens of different shops. Then I ran my water experiment. I had Lu Feng drink the cup that had been sitting on the dresser for an hour, no effect. The cup from the space's house, also nothing. But the cup from the frozen time storage room worked perfectly, just like fresh spring water. So the water loses its power over time in normal conditions, but the storage room preserves it perfectly. That meant I could fill containers at the spring and store them in the storage room for whenever we needed them. Lu Feng held me and said he and Lu Li had dropped off supplies at the warehouse, including my building materials. I should pick them up tomorrow. I mumbled okay and fell asleep in his arms, feeling safe for the first time in what felt like years. The next morning, I took the kids to the warehouse and found it packed floor to ceiling. The brothers had organized everything with labels, which I appreciated since I wouldn't recognize half of it otherwise. Lu Li had gotten inflatable boats, rafts, rain gear, outdoor supplies, tons of charcoal, and even hand warmers. Lu Feng had bought powerful generators, solar and diesel, along with solar panels, batteries, water towers, bottled water, and drinks. Someone had also stockpiled fuel, which was essential since cars and generators need it, and it can't be made again. Over the next several days, life became a blur of collecting. My in-laws kept sending truckloads of grain, dried goods, spices, and sauces. I spent hours absorbing everything into my space, drinking spring water whenever I got tired. Inside the space, I divided the land into 3 zones: farming, livestock, and storage for large items like generators and solar panels. Installing the kitchen hood and water heater in the space house nearly broke me. Lu Feng had to coach me from outside, talking me through each step. My in-laws visited farms in the countryside and came back with a small zoo. 2 pigs, 2 cows, 2 sheep, 1 male, 1 female of each, plus whole broods of chickens, ducks, and geese. I put the animals at the far edge of the space, as far from the house as possible. The thought of feeding them and cleaning up their waste every day made me want to cry. They also brought hundreds of pounds of fresh meat, seeds for high-yield crops, vegetables, and fruit tree saplings. The saplings reminded me I'd forgotten to order fruit, so I immediately bought loads of it online. Luli came through with weapons, various knives, a tang sword, crossbows, and my hands were shaking when I stored these, 2 handguns with ammunition. Lu Feng's medical contact delivered a well-organized supply of antibiotics, cold medicine, wound treatments, children's medicine, and supplements. We spent nearly all our money. I even maxed out every loan app one could find. All those ads about instant approval and interest-free periods finally came in handy. My online orders arrived in waves. My in-laws stayed home with the kids, happily unwrapping packages like it was Christmas every day. Our building turned out to be a blessing. Only about 30% of units were occupied, mostly on lower floors. The highest resident was a couple on the 16th floor. Nobody ever came up to our level. In my past life, nobody even knew we lived here, and that's probably what kept us safe during those first months. This time, my plan was simple. Stay hidden in this apartment for as long as possible and never leave unless absolutely necessary. On August 8th, the temperature hit 38 degrees Celsius. We were running out of time. Lu Feng finished the rooftop work. The glass canopy and solar panels were done. My in-laws spent the day cooking meals, packing them in disposable containers, and storing them in my space for later. I set up a dedicated shelf for ready-to-eat food so we could grab meals without cooking during emergencies. Luli returned the next day with 3 young men, Lu Qing, Lu Ming, and Lu Cheng. They were all from the same village, orphans who grew up under their grandparents' care, and later followed Luli. Lu Cheng, the one with dyed yellow hair, was the loudest, all smiles and charm. Lu Feng whispered that despite their rough edges, they were decent people. My in-laws welcomed them warmly, since they'd watched these boys grow up. Luli set them up in the empty apartment next door, which had never sold. With the apocalypse coming, we just moved in without a second thought. Luli had already installed heat-blocking curtains and solar panels there too. Luli had also bought a recreational vehicle and brought the 3 guys to help modify it. They replaced the windows with blast-proof glass, upgraded the front bumper with high-carbon steel, mounted solar panels on the roof, and added a retractable awning. When I saw the finished product, I was thrilled. It was the perfect vehicle for evacuating with a family. The next priority was fuel. Since it's tightly regulated, we used a slow method, driving to gas stations all over the city, filling up, then siphoning the fuel out. Luli, Lu Feng, and I did this for 4 or 5 days straight. Combined with what we'd already stockpiled, we had several tons, enough to drive hundreds of thousands of kilometers. By August 15th, I stored the fully loaded RV in my space. That evening, the official high-temperature warning came. Power rationing began. In the apartment building's group chats, some people celebrated getting time off work. Others complained about working from home. Our family gathered in the living room in silence. For the first time, everyone besides me truly felt it. What I told them was real. The heat warning had come exactly as I said. The boiling rain would follow. Luli asked how many days until the rain. I said I couldn't remember exactly, maybe 3 to 5 days after the warning. I started feeling afraid again. During all the busy days of stockpiling, I hadn't had time to think. But now, sitting here watching it begin, the fear came flooding back. Part of me still wished everything I'd said was just a nightmare. Then someone knocked on the door. It was Lu Cheng and the other 2. They said since the car was finished and the heat warning meant no more work, they planned to leave in the morning. Li was annoyed. He'd worked hard to get those 3 guys here, and now they wanted to leave just as things were getting serious. I'd gotten to know them over the past few days, since they ate all their meals with us. Lu Cheng was the talkative, cheerful one. Lu Qing had a baby face and looked harmless, but he was the sharpest and most observant. Lu Ming barely spoke, but he was the hardest worker, just not good at expressing himself. When Luli just stared at them without speaking, they got nervous. Lu Qing carefully asked if there was something else they needed to do. Before Luli could force them to stay, I jumped in with a story. I told them my company had a large supermarket nearby that was supposed to open soon, but the workers organizing the warehouse had gone on strike because of
The heat.
I said my boss needed people to sort inventory at night when it cooled down, and Luli was embarrassed to ask because the pay was low. Lu Cheng immediately agreed. He said they didn't need much, just cigarette money. Lu Qing said they'd do it for free. Lu Ming just nodded. After they left, Lu Feng stared at me in disbelief. Since when does your construction company own a supermarket? I explained the truth to my family. In my past life, I'd heard from a neighbor that a big chain supermarket near here had been stocking up before its grand opening, but the heat and rain hit before they could open. All that inventory got flooded. People said if someone had grabbed those supplies beforehand, it could have saved lives. Lu Feng and Lu Li jumped up, excited. This was our first free shopping opportunity. They decided to scout the location the next day and figure out when the staff would leave for the heat break. We'd move in a day or two before the rain started, giving us the best window. My mother-in-law was confused. She'd believed my supermarket story completely. When Lu Feng told her it was just to trick the three guys into staying, she was stunned. She said I'd never lied before in my life. Then she smacked Lu Feng and blamed him for corrupting me. I felt a little guilty, but also warm inside. My in-laws have always been like that, always taking my side, never complaining about me to Lu Feng. They know I speak bluntly and sometimes say things that aren't very polite, but they never hold it against me. In their eyes, I'm the one who turned their wild younger son into a responsible man. They've always been grateful for that, even if we've had our disagreements about raising the kids. The temperature hit 40 degrees Celsius. The sun actually stung your skin. Lu Feng and Lu Li went to scout the supermarket while I stayed home receiving the last batch of online orders, snacks for the kids, who happily ripped open packages and munched away. Hearing Lu Cheng mention cigarettes reminded me we hadn't stockpiled tobacco or alcohol. Nobody in our family smokes, so it slipped my mind. But in the apocalypse, cigarettes, alcohol, and tea become like currency. Money becomes worthless. Everything is bartered. I marked nearby liquor and tobacco shops on my map, planning to hit them once the rain started. I also realized I should download offline maps. Once the internet dies, there's no GPS. The brothers came home sunburned and drenched in sweat despite wearing sun protection. They'd managed to chat with the supermarket's manager by pretending to ask about security guard jobs. A cigarette and some casual questions later, they learned the last shipment arrives tomorrow. Then the staff goes on break with nobody left guarding the warehouse, just security cameras. Lu Li went back that night and got Lu Qing installed as a watchman at the warehouse. He probably offered rock-bottom wages and threw in free labor from Lu Cheng and Lu Ming to organize inventory. The manager couldn't refuse a deal that good. I mentioned that Lu Qing probably hadn't fully believed my supermarket story yesterday. Lu Feng confirmed he's the sharpest of the three. Then my mother-in-law told me Lu Qing's story. His father was a violent gambler who beat his mother to death, then started beating him. Lu Li saved the boy when he was barely alive. Later, the father drowned in a village pond after drinking. From Lu Feng's eyes, I could tell that drowning wasn't purely accidental. Before the apocalypse, that would have horrified me. After surviving 2 years in a world where people killed each other over scraps of food, I actually respected that kind of decisiveness. Lu Li assured me Lu Qing is fiercely loyal to anyone who treats him well. I suggested we tell Lu Qing the truth about what's coming, but Lu Li said no. Let him figure it out on his own, so nothing traces back to me. I brought up my plan to raid tobacco and liquor shops. Both brothers got visibly excited, which made me roll my eyes. They almost seemed to be looking forward to the apocalypse. Over the next 2 days, temperatures climbed to nearly 50 degrees Celsius. The streets emptied completely. Shops closed. In our building's group chat, people complained non-stop about the heat and their air conditioners breaking down. We'd already protected our outdoor AC units with heat shields and replaced all curtains with thermal-blocking ones, adding blackout fabric on top. Once the power goes out and we switch to solar, we can't afford to be the only apartment with lights on in a dark building. I knew it was time to move. The temperature was about to jump from 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. In my past life, that sudden spike killed many people from heat stroke. I'd been giving everyone a daily cup of spring water as a precaution. The results were clear even without telling them what it was. My mother-in-law's insomnia disappeared. My father-in-law's leg pain went away. Xiao Jin's nose stopped bleeding so easily, and Xiao Yu's night sweats were gone. I kept filling water bottles around the clock and storing them in the frozen time room. That night, Lu Feng, Lu Li, and I suited up in all black, dark sun-protective jackets with hoods, black masks. On the empty streets at night, even our own parents wouldn't recognize us. My mother-in-law told us to be careful, reminding us we already had plenty of supplies. But the three of us exchanged a look. Our eyes were full of excitement. Free supplies that we don't even have to carry?
Who says no to that?
We drove 10 minutes to the supermarket warehouse. Lu Cheng and Lu Ming were inside playing cards. Lu Cheng proudly told me they'd organized all the inventory, and it was ready. I felt a little guilty for deceiving him. Lu Qing understood the situation without a word. He quietly pulled Lu Qing away, then walked to the monitoring room and flipped a switch. All the security cameras went dark. He asked Lu Li if he needed help. Lu Li told him he'd explain everything later. Lu Qing just smiled and left without a single question. His trust in Lu Li was absolute. Inside the warehouse, everything was neatly sorted on shelves. The brothers tied up loose items while I absorbed everything into my space, sometimes whole shelves at a time. Since it was all shelf-stable goods with no fresh food, I stored it in the open area I'd set aside behind the space house. We worked until dawn. By the end, my head felt like it was going to explode. Even the spring water barely kept me going. My face had gone white, but I refused to stop until the last item was collected. Lu Feng carried me out, full of guilt. He said he'd been so caught up in the excitement that he hadn't noticed how drained I was. He told me I never had to push myself that hard. If we couldn't finish in one night, we'd come back the next. I buried my face in his chest and felt my eyes sting. After more than 10 years together, the passion has settled into something quieter. But the care between us has never faded. He worries when I'm tired. I worry when he drinks too much at work dinners. It's not dramatic love anymore. It's the kind that keeps you going. I woke up to Lu Feng being his usual clingy self. After he finally settled down, we lay in bed and just talked, something we hadn't done in ages. Since Xiaoyu was born, he'd taken a job in another province to earn more money. We only saw each other a handful of times a year, though he called or video chatted every single day without fail. That's why the kids never felt distant from him. My mind drifted back to the supermarket hall. I realized we'd missed some small but important things: nail clippers, garbage bags, and cat litter. Cat litter sounds strange, but when the water stops, toilets become useless. And even though we have water now, we can't flush freely. The plumbing connects to the whole building. If neighbors can't even find drinking water and hear us flushing upstairs, we'd become a target. I told Lu Feng I wanted to raid the tobacco and liquor shops tonight and grab more diesel fuel. He worried about me overdoing it again, but I assured him my mental powers were growing stronger. I could now control things inside the space without even entering it physically. He said I should take it easy, since we had more than enough supplies. I told him I appreciated that, but I'm not the kind of person who sits back while others work. We're a family, and we survive together. My only goal is for all of us to make it through. Then he said something that worried me, that with our resources, we could basically do whatever we wanted. I sat up and looked him straight in the eye. "Don't think like that," I said. "There will always be people stronger and better prepared than us. We're ordinary people. Our only goal is keeping this family alive." At lunch, my mother-in-law called a family meeting. She and my father-in-law had overheard our conversation through the bedroom door. Not intentionally. She was quick to clarify. My father-in-law spoke up firmly, agreeing with me. He told Lu Feng his attitude was a problem. No matter how many supplies we have, we're not invincible. We need to stay humble and stay hidden. Lu Feng didn't fully get my point at first. He thought that with all our supplies in my space, we didn't need to be so cautious. I explained that laying low doesn't mean living miserably, it means not flaunting what we have. Even in normal times, people get jealous. In the apocalypse, someone with food becomes a target. One person isn't scary, but a desperate mob is. My mother-in-law backed me up with a story from her own childhood during a famine. She said people could literally smell what you'd eaten. My father-in-law added the most important point. Out of our whole family, only Lu Feng and Lu Li are able-bodied men. Everyone else is old, young, or female. If something happened to those two, the rest of us would be helpless. That hit both brothers hard. They'd been thinking about how strong our position was and forgot they were the only ones holding it together. I added one more thing. Laying low doesn't mean being a pushover. If someone threatens us, we fight back. We just don't start trouble or show off. Show enough strength to keep people away, but never enough to attract the wrong attention. Lu Feng finally understood. Then Lu Li raised a new topic, physical fitness. He pointed out that Lu Feng had spent years sitting in offices and riding in cars. If the power goes out, just climbing 35 floors of stairs would be a challenge. Lu Feng got defensive, and the two brothers started bickering like children. Lu Feng even threatened to cut off Lu Li's betel nut supply that I was storing in the space. Lu Li almost lost his mind. Betel nut is his one vice. Once they calmed down, I brought us back to the serious discussion. I said everyone needs to start training, not to become fighters but to be able to protect themselves. That includes Xiao Jin and Xiao Yu. My in-laws immediately resisted. The kids are so small, they said. Can't we just protect them? Can't they hide in the space? Lu Feng and Lu Li both pushed back. The kids can't stay hidden forever. If they panic and scream when they see something terrifying, that puts everyone in danger. Better to prepare them now. My father-in-law sighed and agreed, asking only that we not be too harsh. These children were supposed to be worrying about homework and playing with friends, not surviving an apocalypse. That softened all of us. Lu Li said training isn't punishment. It's something useful even in peaceful times. The old couple nodded, knowing they spoil the kids too much, but unable to help themselves. Then I said there was one more important thing we needed to discuss. I brought up the topic everyone was curious about, supernatural abilities. My mother-in-law asked if they'd be like magic powers from fairy tales. I told her they're real, but not that dramatic. I explained my theory. The boiling rain carries a virus that affects everyone exposed to it. The outcome depends on your body's strength. Weak bodies turn into zombies. That's why it started at hospitals, where the sickest people were. Strong bodies evolve and develop abilities. And some people end up fine, but with no powers at all. In my past life, most people with abilities were young, healthy men. Women, children, and elderly people rarely developed them, and when they did, the powers were usually supportive types: water, wood, healing, or space manipulation. The stronger your body, the more powerful your ability. Top-tier ones included lightning, fire, and metal. Lu Feng used this to convince his parents why training the kids matters. If stronger bodies resist the virus better, then getting the kids in shape could literally save their lives. My mother-in-law panicked and smacked him across the mouth for even suggesting her grandchildren could become zombies. He had to spit 3 times for good luck before she calmed down. I reassured everyone. In my past life, the kids and I never turned into zombies even without the spring water or exercise. We just didn't develop any abilities either. So with training and the spring water, our chances of evolving powers should be much higher. I gave them a quick overview of ability types: elemental powers like fire, water, ice, and lightning, body enhancement like strength, speed, and heightened senses, and special abilities like healing or communicating with animals. I told them we'd go deeper once someone actually developed a power. Lu Li took charge and announced that starting tomorrow, everyone exercises at least 1 hour daily. Tailored plans for each person, including the 3 guys next door. Then I told them we needed to raid the tobacco and liquor shops tonight. We only had a day or 2 left. I could feel the temperature was about to hit 60 degrees Celsius, and the boiling rain would follow. Lu Feng had already scouted which shops were abandoned. We'd only take from stores with no one inside. I also admitted the space was running low on room. Everyone was surprised. My mother-in-law thought it was unlimited. I reminded her the outdoor area is only about the size of a football field. Between farming, livestock, storage, and the house, space was tight. Large items were already stacked dangerously high. I had a plan, though. That night, I also wanted to visit 2 jewelry stores. Since my space came from a jade bracelet, I suspected jade might be the key to upgrading it. If not jade, then maybe zombie crystals later. Either way, I needed to try before we ran out of room. My mother-in-law offered her jade bracelet to test my theory. It was the one Lu Feng and I bought her years ago for 10,000 yuan. She treasured it so much she only wore it on holidays to show off to relatives. I tried to refuse, but she pressed it into my hands and said as long as the family stays together, she doesn't need a bracelet. I absorbed it into the space and watched with my mind. The jade floated in the air, glowed faintly, then disappeared. But when I looked around, nothing had changed. The space hadn't grown. Everyone's faces fell. I explained it wasn't a total failure. The space did absorb the jade, which proved jade is the right material. It just wasn't enough energy to cause a visible upgrade. That gave everyone hope again. I tested my gold and silver jewelry too, plus some diamonds. None of them worked. Only jade got absorbed. So now we knew. The space only accepts jade. That night, Lu Feng and I went out and cleaned out the abandoned tobacco and liquor shops he'd scouted. I left the convenience store's food and daily supplies alone. I didn't want to take everything in case someone else needed to stockpile before the floods. But cigarettes, alcohol, and tea aren't survival essentials, so I took those without guilt. We also hit over a dozen gas stations in the suburbs and collected enough fuel to last us 10 years. The jewelry stores were a problem though, heavy security systems that would trigger alarms if we broke in. We couldn't risk getting arrested days before the apocalypse. Then around 3 or 4 a.m., we got incredibly lucky. While scouting a jewelry store's location, we spotted a professional theft crew breaking in. They had a hacker who disabled the alarms and cameras. We hid outside and watched. When they finished, they'd taken all the gold, silver, and diamonds, but left the jade behind. Jade is fragile, hard to transport in bulk, and not worth much in most retail stores compared to gold. Their loss, our gain. We swept in and collected every piece of jade they'd left. Then we followed their trail to every other jewelry store they hit that night, picking up the jade behind them. It was thrilling, and if anything was ever discovered, the investigation would lead to the real thieves, not us. By the time the sky started getting light, I was grinning like a criminal mastermind. Lu Feng had to snap me out of it and remind me it was time to go. We rushed home and collapsed into bed. I didn't even check whether the jade had changed my space. That could wait until I woke up. Lu Feng and I slept until mid-afternoon after our all-night raid. When we stumbled out, the apartment was empty. Out in the hallway, Luli was drilling Lu Cheng and the others on punching bags he'd already hung up. He had the corridor set up perfectly, doors open on both sides for airflow, fans running, heat curtains on the windows. My in-laws had taken the kids stair climbing for exercise. When they came back, Xiao Jin was silent with a stiff face, and Xiao Yu was in his grandfather's arms with tear tracks down his red cheeks. The grandparents looked guilty. Normally, they'd carry Xiao Yu the moment he whined, but this time they'd made him climb 6 floors on his own before giving in. I cleaned the boys up and praised them. Xiao Yu immediately brightened and proudly counted on his fingers how many floors he'd climbed. Xiao Jin stayed quiet. When I asked what was wrong, he looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm 10 years old. I'm not a little kid anymore." Then he laid it all out. He'd noticed that Dad, who normally only comes home for a few days at New Year, had been here over 2 weeks. That Uncle Lee had never stayed at our house before. That the grandparents seemed worried all the time. That strange men were living next door. That Lu Feng and I kept going out late at night. He checked our room during bathroom trips. And that today, his grandparents forced Xiao Yu to climb stairs until he sobbed, when they'd normally carry him at the first pout. I was stunned. My little boy had been watching everything and piecing it together while I assumed he didn't notice. I sent Xiao Yu to play with his dad and closed the door. Then I thought about how to explain. I noticed the tablet on his desk and had an idea. He plays a zombie fighting game, the only game I allow him. I told him the zombies from his game might appear in real life. His eyes went wide. I explained it gently, connecting it to things he understood. The weird weather, the extreme heat that's never happened before, that's all part of it. Then I told him that just like the plants in his game have special powers, people in our world might develop abilities too. He got excited and asked if we could shoot ice or fire like in the game. I said yes, but not everyone gets powers and they're all different. Some people might just be tougher, like the walnut shield in his game, or faster, like certain zombies. I wanted to prepare him in case he doesn't develop a flashy ability, or any ability at all. I told Xiao Jin honestly that even with training, children his age might not develop abilities. He's still young, and that's okay. Kids are supposed to be protected by adults. I said maybe powers would come when he's older and stronger.
He was quiet for a long time.
Then he said, but if I keep training, there's a chance, right? I nodded but warned him there were no guarantees. He looked at me with steady eyes and repeated something I'd always taught him. You said what matters isn't the result, it's the effort. If I try my best, I won't have regrets. I hugged him tight. My little boy had truly grown up. Lu Feng had been listening at the door. When he told the family what Xiao Jin said, everyone went quiet. Lu Li smiled and told his brother, you married a great woman and raised a great son. For the first time, he seemed envious. The truth is, I raised both boys almost entirely on my own. Lu Feng worked far away and came home rarely. The grandparents helped with feeding and clothing, but education was all me. I never complained about Lu Feng in front of the kids. I always told them how hard their dad works and how much he loves them. During video calls, even when I was exhausted, I'd sit with them and chat together, so the kids always felt close to him. Xiao Jin taught himself discipline early. Homework first after school, no nagging needed, strict screen time, loves reading. Xiaoyu is younger but already knows when to apologize and how to charm adults when he's in trouble. I spent years building these habits. When I came out with Xiao Jin, his eyes were bright again. Everyone stared at me with warm expressions. Lu Feng pulled me close and said, my wife is amazing. My father-in-law agreed that I'd done a wonderful job with Xiao Jin. Then my father-in-law stood up and told my mother-in-law they should go do another round of stair climbing. He said the kids are being brave, so the grandparents can't fall behind. I reminded them to stay above the 17th floor so nobody in the building discovers how many people are living up here. Lu Li explained everyone's training plan: punching bags for the men, stair climbing, and gentle exercises for the elderly. He admitted he wasn't sure what exercises suited me or the kids. I told him I'd handle my own training and take charge of the boys too. Then Lu Li looked at Lu Feng and nodded toward the hallway. Lu Feng's face went pale, but he obediently followed his brother out to start his workout. I settled on the couch and set my mind into the space to check the effects of all that jade. The difference was obvious. It had expanded. Behind the livestock area, a stretch of green grass had appeared, which meant the cows and sheep could graze on their own. The farming zone had also grown outward. My earlier plantings of cabbage, potatoes, and sweet potatoes had already sprouted, though I had no idea if they were growing fast or slow. I'd have to ask my mother-in-law. The pond looked slightly bigger, and the spring flowed a little stronger, though the water's effect seemed the same. The fish pond had more fish. I'd need to expand it soon. The biggest surprise was the house. The bare minimum interior had transformed into something luxurious. The kitchen hood and water heater I'd clumsily installed were now neatly built into the walls. You could only tell they were the same ones because of the stickers Xiaoyu had stuck on them. The storage room walls now had built-in shelving that automatically organized items. The floor space hadn't changed, but the storage capacity had increased a lot. I was very satisfied. The space had responded to the jade exactly as I'd hoped. My mental powers were growing too. I could now sense the emotions of people nearby through energy waves. Sitting in the living room, I could feel 5 distinct patterns through the wall. One was wild and bouncing everywhere, that had to be Lu Cheng. One was almost flat, Lu Ming, always steady. Lu Feng's emotions were like a roller coaster, which matched the sounds of him suffering through his workout. Lu Li's pattern was cheerful. He was clearly enjoying torturing his brother. Lu Qing's was calm but different from Lu Ming's. He was deep in thought. I couldn't read actual thoughts, just emotions, and only within a limited range. My head started hurting after a few minutes, so I pulled back. But I was excited. With practice, my range and endurance would grow. Maybe eventually I could influence other people's minds, like a true psychic ability user. I pulled some ring toss hoops from the space for Xiaoyu, a jumping game to disguise exercise as fun. For Xiao Jin, jump rope would work since his school already required it. for myself, hula hoops, yoga, and joining the family on stair climbs. Xiao Jin watched me produce the hoops from thin air and compared my space to a video game inventory. He asked if he could go inside. I told him yes, but I needed to finish organizing it first. He asked about his dad, and I admitted Lu Feng still can't enter. That frustrated me. I desperately needed help with the farming, and especially the animal waste, which I could barely stand. I'd been using my mental powers to clean it just to avoid the smell. Taking care of the animals was a comedy of errors. I only knew cows and sheep eat grass and rabbits eat carrots. My mother-in-law had to prepare the pig feed outside for me to transfer in. Chickens ate rice and found bugs. Ducks and geese I just dumped in the fish pond and hoped for the best. Xiao Jin took it well and went off to play ring toss with his brother, both of them jumping happily around the living room. The next day, the temperature hit 60 degrees Celsius. We'd finished our stockpiling just in time. Everything nearby worth collecting was already in my space. I saw news about the jewelry store robberies online. The surveillance photos were dark and blurry. Even I couldn't pick out Lu Feng and me from the shadows. Luli pointed out the thieves might notice the jade was missing too and get suspicious, but we agreed there was no way to trace it back to us. In our building's group chat, a woman on the 3rd floor was begging for help. Her adult son had collapsed from heatstroke, convulsing and vomiting. She couldn't reach emergency services by phone. Nobody responded. Everyone was too afraid to go outside. Cars on the street were spontaneously catching fire in the heat. When a man finally responded, he cruelly said her son deserved it for being weaker than women and children. She exploded and cursed him for 15 minutes straight without repeating herself once. Luli jokingly asked his mother if she'd met her match. She threw a slipper at him. I noted both people. The woman lived in our building. I need to watch out for her. The man I vaguely remembered from my past life. He'd been the only person in our evacuation group who developed an ability, Earth powers, and he'd been incredibly arrogant about it. I'd already moved both our cars into my space the night before, which was only possible because of the upgrade. We didn't dare turn on the TV for fear it might overheat. Even with air conditioning running full blast, I had to fill Xiao Yu's baby bathtub with ice and set it under the AC to keep the apartment bearable. Lu Cheng and the other 2 guys stayed at our place since their apartment next door was too hot. By now, even the quietest of them, Lu Ming, understood why Lu Li had kept them here. If they'd still been in their tiny rental back home, they might have died from the heat. Lu Li finally told them the truth, that we believe the apocalypse is coming. They were stunned. Lu Cheng nervously asked if the supermarket inventory they'd organized had been collected by us. I felt embarrassed having my lie exposed, but they didn't care. They were just grateful and amazed. An entire 2-story supermarket's worth of supplies. They knew exactly what was in there because they'd sorted it all themselves. Lu Ming, who never shows emotion, looked genuinely moved. All 3 of them grew up without parents, treated like outcasts by their village. Only Lu Li never looked down on them. My in-laws welcomed them. Lu Feng played with them as kids. And now I treated them like family too, serving them water, letting them play with my children, asking them for help instead of avoiding them. For people who'd never had a real family, being needed and included meant everything. Lu Qing had already figured out that I was the one with the special knowledge, not Lu Li or Lu Feng. He'd been watching our family's habits, how everyone always looked to me for reactions during conversations. He was sharp. When my mother-in-law casually asked me about the woman in the group chat, I decided it was time to stop hiding things. I told everyone, including the 3 guys, that in my dream, the rude man from the chat, someone named Gao Ning, was the only person from our building who developed abilities when we evacuated. Lu Feng squeezed my hand, unhappy that I'd said this in front of outsiders. Lu Li tensed up. My in-laws got nervous, but I had my reasons. I'd been reading the 3 guys' emotional waves the whole time. All I sensed was gratitude, excitement, and from Lu Qing especially, a rock-solid sense of loyalty. Lu Qing stood and bowed deeply. Lu Cheng and Lu Ming quickly followed. Lu Qing spoke first. He said he didn't fully understand the situation yet, but he could see I trusted them enough to share dangerous secrets. He swore on his life that nothing would leave his mouth. He said his life already belonged to Lu Li for saving him years ago, and now it belonged to all of us. Lu Qing jumped up, offended at being left out. He said they'd all sworn long ago to follow Lu Li forever, and anyone who betrayed me would have to go through him first. Even the silent Lu Ming spoke up, saying he felt exactly the same as Lu Qing. Lu Li smiled and accepted their pledge. He said I'd spoken openly because I consider them family, and their loyalty was exactly what we needed to hear. I joked that since everyone except my mother-in-law and me is named Lu, we too are the real outsiders. My mother-in-law got playfully fired up about how women go through the pain of childbirth, yet kids still take the father's name. The men all went quiet. I gave her a thumbs up, and she beamed. Then I got serious. I told the three guys about my dream, the apocalypse, the disasters, the zombies. I kept it vague and didn't mention rebirth. When I finished, Lu Cheng's first question was whether they'd get supernatural abilities. I sighed. Every single man in this household, down to 9-year-old Xiaojin, cared more about getting cool powers than surviving the end of the world. Lu Li told them abilities depend on physical fitness, so if they want powers, they'd better train harder. Lu Cheng groaned but said he'd do whatever it takes. We got back to serious talk. I told everyone that I had no memory of the cursing woman from the chat, but I remembered the man, Gao Ning, clearly. He was the first person with abilities I ever saw in my past life. His power was earth-based, not very strong offensively, but he acted like he was above everyone else. I recalled that some people in our evacuation group were terrified of him, whispering that he'd killed someone. Lu Li guessed that the woman I couldn't remember was probably dead, likely killed by Gao Ning after the apocalypse, once he had powers and no laws to stop him. Lu Feng agreed. Gao Ning's personality was cruel even now. With abilities and no consequences, he'd be dangerous. My father-in-law reminded everyone again, stay low, stay quiet. You never know who will become a monster when society collapses. I thought about my past life in the government base. Back then, I'd followed the official evacuation because I thought it would be safer with a group. It wasn't. The base was barely built, crammed with dozens of people sleeping in one room, men and women mixed together. You worked for scraps of food that barely counted as a meal. As a woman alone with a child, I couldn't do much heavy labor, so we were always hungry. And the things that happened in those mixed sleeping quarters, that's where I killed my first man. I wasn't going back to any base this time. Lu Feng noticed my expression darkening and gently took my phone away. He told me to stop reading the chat. Lu Qing eagerly promised nobody would ever bother me while he was around. Lu Li smacked him on the head and told him to worry about controlling himself first. Little Xiao Yu chimed in from the side, wagging his finger at Lu Qing. Uncle Qing is naughty. Uncle will spank you. Everyone cracked up. I put the kids down for a nap on the living room floor since the bedrooms were too hot without AC. The men gathered around the tea table to discuss plans, and my in-laws went to make dumplings. Meanwhile, the group chat kept going. Someone eventually asked the woman about her son. Then I heard something, a faint wail. Nobody else in the apartment reacted, but messages confirmed it. Neighbors could hear her crying. Her son had likely died. People expressed sympathy, but Gao Ning popped up again, saying the son deserved it and early death, early peace. People told him he was heartless, but nobody could really argue. The heat wasn't going away. Then a young couple on the 5th floor spoke up with a different problem. They'd always eaten at work and never cooked at home. With everything shut down and no more food delivery, they had nothing to eat. They asked if any neighbor could spare some food and offered to pay. The chat went quiet. In the group chat, the young wife on the 5th floor was begging neighbors for food in the most exaggerated, cutesy voice I'd ever heard. She was sending voice messages, dragging out every word like a little girl. I got a wicked idea. I walked over to the tea table where the guys were chatting and played the voice message on speaker. Lu Feng was mid-sip and spat tea all over Lu Cheng's face. I asked the single guys innocently if they found the voice attractive. Then I cleared my throat and imitated it. Oh, brothers, could you please help little old me? Lu Feng slapped his hand over my mouth. The other 4 stared at me like they'd seen a ghost. I pointed out that a man from the 16th floor, someone I knew had a girlfriend, was already offering to deliver food to this woman.
See?
Even he's more charming than you lot. No wonder you're all single. All four single men looked at Lu Feng as if to say, "Control your wife." He just shrugged helplessly. Lu Li finally put on his serious big brother voice and said that regardless, the woman was married, and that particular voice made his skin crawl. The others agreed. They had goosebumps everywhere. I turned to Lu Feng and asked what he thought. He pulled me close without missing a beat. For me, there are only two kinds of women, my wife and strangers. From behind us came my mother-in-law's icy voice. "So, I'm a stranger?" She was holding a kitchen knife. Lu Feng nearly jumped out of his skin and quickly added, "Three kinds. Wife, mom, and strangers." I burst out laughing, but my mother-in-law wasn't done. She pointed the knife at the men and said she'd heard that woman's voice too. She warned them never to bring home any messy women, then she waved the knife suggestively toward their lower halves. Lu Cheng instinctively covered himself, then remembered I was there, and awkwardly let go. I hid my face, trying not to laugh. She went down the line. She told the three guys that since they had no family, they were part of ours now, and her rules apply. She made Lu Li confirm he wouldn't cause trouble. She reminded Lu Feng of what he'd just said and told him if he ever betrayed me, he'd no longer be her son. Lu Feng swore his devotion was real, not just to please her. After she finally left, everyone exhaled. Then she came right back and they all snapped to attention again. She laughed and said she'd only returned because she needed someone to help roll dumpling wrappers. Lu Cheng volunteered immediately. Lu Feng flicked my nose and called me a troublemaker. I stuck my tongue out and went back to the couch. Lu Qing said he was surprised by my playful side. Lu Feng smiled softly and said this was actually who I really am, the carefree girl he fell in love with in college. After Xiao Jin was born, I'd forced myself to grow up, and he hadn't seen this light-hearted version of me in a long time. Lu Qing sighed and said he envied their relationship. Then he nudged Lu Li about finding someone. Lu Li waved it off. The apocalypse was no time for romance. He joked that he had two nephews to take care of him in old age. Lu Feng rolled his eyes, muttering that apparently he'd raised two sons just so his brother could retire comfortably. I woke up to shouting outside. It was raining. People in the complex were ecstatic. They thought the heat was finally over. Some ran outside into the rain, cheering. I stood at the window and felt nothing. This was exactly how it happened before. Lu Feng wrapped his arms around me from behind. I leaned into him and said quietly, "Welcome to the apocalypse." Within minutes, the celebrating stopped. People screamed and scrambled back inside. The rain was scalding hot. Lu Cheng cracked the window and stuck his arm out, then yanked it back with a yelp. Someone in the group chat measured the water temperature at 65 degrees Celsius. The actual rain falling from the sky was even hotter. The chat went from joy to despair instantly. Someone's husband typed what everyone was thinking. Is this the end of the world? Nobody laughed at him. Nobody said anything at all. I told Lu Feng we needed to go out immediately and collect more supplies before the flooding started. At this rain rate, water would start rising by morning. Everything left in stores would be ruined. Lu Cheng couldn't contain his curiosity any longer and blurted out where we'd stored all the supermarket supplies. Lu Qing smacked him, but the question was out. I decided it was time. We'd need their help today, and we couldn't hide this space forever. I pulled a large bag of beetle nut out of thin air. All three guys froze. Lu Qing couldn't even form words. Lu Qing recovered first and asked if this was a space ability. I just smiled and let them assume that. Lu Cheng immediately tried to declare me his big sister and switch his loyalty from Lu Li to me. Lu Li grabbed his ear and twisted. Lu Feng glared. Lu Cheng backpedaled frantically. Okay, she's still just sister-in-law. Even quiet Lu Ming perked up and asked if we were heading out to work. Everyone suited up, hats, masks, full protective gear. No faces showing. I pulled the SUV out of my space in the underground garage, and the three guys finally understood everything. The RV they'd modified was in there too. Lu Li had planned to keep them from the very beginning. I saw the three of them exchange a look, a silent promise to each other. No words needed. All six of us piled into the seven-seater. Lu Feng drove while I navigated. We'd planned our route in advance. Large shopping malls farther from home, where supplies were plentiful and concentrated in one place. Tomorrow the floods would make this impossible. Tonight was our last chance. The roads were completely empty. Lu Feng drove like a maniac and said he'd never enjoyed driving this much. We didn't know it, but people in our complex saw our car leave, and it sparked a chain reaction. Neighbors started driving out to nearby shops. They found most supplies already gone, especially the tobacco and liquor. Some cursed whoever had taken useless stuff instead of food. Little did they know. We headed straight for a large shopping mall downtown. In the underground parking garage, we hit our first problem. The escalators were dead. Lu Cheng pulled out a thin metal tool and picked the security door lock in minutes. I gave him a thumbs up. He begged me not to tell my mother-in-law about his lockpicking skills. Once inside, we killed the power to disable the security cameras and got to work. I went straight for the warehouse, where everything was pre-packed and easy to absorb. The cold storage still had fresh food from when the mall was open just days ago. I collected the entire freezer units whole, dropping them into my frozen time storage so nothing would spoil. My mental powers had grown enormously. I cleared the warehouse and the ground floor in under an hour. The five guys spread across the mall's 5 floors, packing things up and texting me store names so I could come collect. Lu Feng and Lu Li knew I needed jade, so at the jewelry floor they pulled every piece of jade from the display cases and stockrooms, leaving everything else for me to grab quickly. Lu Cheng's crew skipped the jewelry entirely and went for practical goods. I also raided places the men would never think of: a toy store for the kids, a big bookstore for their education, and a furniture store. When the guys asked what furniture was for, I said firewood for extreme cold weather. They stared at me blankly, but didn't argue. On the top floor, I found an office with a jade sculpture half my height. The moment I absorbed it, I felt my space tremble. That piece was probably worth more than all the jade I'd collected before combined. There was also a safe that Lu Cheng couldn't crack, so I stored the whole thing to deal with later. By mid-afternoon, floodwater was already forming outside. We raced to hit several more malls. By 2 or 3 a.m., the water reached our shins and was nearly at the car doors. We had to stop and rush home before the car drowned. My in-laws were pacing the living room anxiously. My mother-in-law scolded us for staying out so dangerously late, but we were all grinning. The thrill of stockpiling was addictive. Once you start, you simply can't stop. My mother-in-law shooed us all to bed the moment she saw how exhausted we were. We didn't wake up until the next afternoon. By then, the floodwater outside had reached waist height, and that's with our complex being on higher ground. I checked my space first thing. All that jade from yesterday had worked wonders. The space had expanded to at least double, 2 football fields now, with hills and mountain terrain appearing in the distance. Perfect for planting the fruit trees my in-laws had bought. The grassland for livestock had grown too. My cows and sheep were happily grazing, and I spotted eggs in the grass near the pond, though I had no idea how to hatch them. The small house had become a 2-story building. The second floor was bare like the first floor had originally been, but I knew future upgrades would furnish it automatically. The spring hadn't changed much in size, but I suspected the water's duration might have improved. I filled several cups and brought them outside, telling everyone not to touch them so I could test how long the effect lasted. When I told everyone about the upgrades, Lu Cheng and the others were stunned. They'd thought my space was just storage. Learning it had farmland, animals, a house, and magic water blew their minds. They immediately started exercising like madmen, hoping that if the space upgraded enough, maybe they could enter too. Meanwhile, I checked the building's group chat and saw something that made my stomach drop. People were asking about the SUV that drove out yesterday. We'd been the first car to leave, and in those empty streets, we were impossible to miss. Neighbors were trying to figure out whose car it was. I wasn't too worried since I'd just moved here, and barely anyone knew me. But then I got a private message. It was from a mom at Xiao Yu's old kindergarten. She recognized our car from the photo someone took. Her relative lived in this complex and had shared the picture with her. Lu Feng said to just be honest, tell her we drove back to our old apartment to grab some food supplies. That would make sense. I messaged her back casually and she seemed to buy it. I even added a friendly warning that the weather seemed bad and I'd wanted extra food for the kids. She responded by sending me a photo of all the food she'd stockpiled. I was relieved she was prepared, but then she posted the exact same photo in her neighborhood group buying chat for everyone to see. I rolled my eyes. Showing the whole world what you've hoarded right before an apocalypse, that woman had no survival instincts whatsoever. That kindergarten mom's cousin started trying to add me as a friend online. When I blocked friend requests, she tagged me directly in the building group chat, trying to force a connection. Other neighbors piled on, demanding I change my username to show my apartment number. Then the cousin dropped the bomb. She told everyone I own the SUV that left first yesterday. The chat exploded. Everyone wanted to know where we'd gone and what we'd found. I wanted to scream at the kindergarten mom for her big mouth. Lu Qing suggested I just leave the group, but Luli said it wasn't that simple. Smart people could trace us eventually. Lu Feng said we should focus on the residents in our building, about 11 households. We pulled up every profile in the group and started analyzing. Luli rated each household by threat level. The woman on the 3rd floor whose son died, 2 stars. She'd been quiet lately, probably devastated. But her cursing skills were formidable, and that's our family's weakness. The 4th floor couple with elderly parents, unknown, hard to judge from their profiles. The 5th floor newlyweds who couldn't cook, 3 stars. If the wife acts like that, the husband probably isn't great either. The family on 5-02 with a high school son, 5 stars. A grown son means real manpower. The 6th floor had 2 young women, maybe 24 or 25, apparently roommates renting together. I glanced at our 4 single men. Not one of them showed the slightest interest. I laughed, truly single by choice. Lu Feng tapped my head and told me to focus. Luli marked them with an X, clearly wanting no complications. My mother-in-law grabbed the phone anyway and studied their photos. Not bad looking, she said, then started browsing one girl's social media. Luli snatched the phone back, flustered. She asked if he was interested. He insisted he absolutely was not. I said I'd only brought them up because 2 women living alone could face trouble later. The men all shook their heads. Nobody wanted that responsibility right now. Fair enough. The 7th floor had an elderly couple living alone, 1 star. Next door was a family similar to ours. Parents, grandparents, and a little boy. The husband's social media was all drinking photos with friends. Luli gave them 3 stars. At least they had one able-bodied man. Then I looked more closely at that family's photo and made a surprise sound. I recognized the woman in the 7-02 family photo. In my past life, she was one of the very few people who showed me kindness. When we were heading to the base, before the tornado, Xiao Yu was crying from hunger. She gave him a small piece of bread and told me her own child, about Xiao Yu's age, had died during the floods. That memory stuck with me. She was the first person in 2 years of apocalypse who helped us without wanting anything in return. I didn't recognize the husband or grandparents in the photo, though. Luli circled their apartment number as someone to watch closely. We finished reviewing all 11 households. The building wasn't very threatening, mostly families with their own vulnerabilities. Luli came up with a clever plan for when neighbors inevitably come knocking to identify residents. Lu Cheng and Lu Ming would answer the door and pretend they're the only ones living on our floor. Lu Ming's muscular build would discourage anyone from pushing further. This way, nobody would know the rest of us were here. With that settled, everyone went back to training. I played with the kids while thinking about the 7-02 woman's child who died in the floods. If I could help somehow, I wanted to, both as a mother who can't stand seeing little ones suffer and to repay her past kindness. But I wouldn't be foolish about it. Then I remembered the water cups I'd set out to test. Over 3 hours had passed. Last time, the spring water lost its effect within an hour. I took a sip, expecting nothing, but it still worked. The space upgrade had extended the water's duration. This was huge. Now I wouldn't need to serve water instantly, every time. For training, I had Xiao Jin practice swinging a jump rope like a weapon, not just skipping. In the apocalypse, killing zombies requires smashing their skulls, which are incredibly hard. You need serious arm strength. I practice too. My hands have always been pathetically weak. I once couldn't open a jar of chili sauce and had to ask a neighbor's husband for help, which earned me dirty looks from his wife. When the men came in and saw me and Xiao Jin whipping ropes around, I explained about zombie weak points, hit the head, or they don't die. Everyone got serious. Even my in-laws asked if they should practice too. I told them their hands were already stronger than mine from years of hard farm work. Luli asked if I wanted to join them on the punching bags. I refused immediately. I saw the muscles bulging on their arms. No, thank you. My plan was to develop my mental powers for long-range attacks instead. I'm a woman who couldn't even slice carrots properly before the apocalypse. Punching bags are simply not in my future. Lu Feng just smiled and ruffled my hair when I refused the punching bags. He knows I'm still the same girl who needs looking after. My mother-in-law agreed. Her lovely daughter-in-law shouldn't have to do such rough work. But my father-in-law surprised everyone by asking to join the men's training. He pointed out he's not even 60 yet and can still carry heavy loads of grain faster than any of them. Luli agreed, as long as he went at his own pace. I tested the remaining cups of spring water throughout the evening. After 4 hours, they were still effective. After that, the effect faded. So the upgrade had quadrupled the water's shelf life outside the storage room. I set up a full water barrel on the dispenser so the family could drink effective spring water throughout the day. I dealt with the group chat situation too. That kindergarten mom kept messaging me, so I sent her screenshots of all the trouble her cousin had caused, then blocked her. The building chat had moved on to organizing floor-by-floor surveys to identify every resident. The man from 5-02, the family Luli rated as most capable, set up a separate group for our building. I didn't join. That would be walking straight into a trap. Everyone kept training. The men hit punching bags. My mother-in-law did exercise videos. I had the boys practice basketball skills, dribbling, passing, catching. I did footwork drills with a badminton racket. The last test cup of water had gone dead by dinner, confirming a 4-hour window. After putting the kids to bed at 9, I entered my space to do maintenance and train my mental powers. I was dreading the animal waste cleanup. Every single day it made me gag, even when I used my mind to move it. My family had actually thought I was pregnant from all the vomiting, and my mother-in-law chased Lu Feng around the house for days. But when I got to the livestock area, the waste was gone. All of it. I watched a cow drop a massive pile right in front of me, and it dissolved into the ground within seconds. The space had developed an automatic cleaning system. I literally jumped around in circles celebrating. This was the single best upgrade yet. Then I realized the downside. I'd been using animal waste as fertilizer for the crops. But watching the chickens scratch around the garden edges, I saw their droppings sink into the soil too. The land was absorbing everything as nutrients automatically. It was a self-sustaining cycle. I fenced some chickens near the crop areas to fertilize the soil naturally. With the automatic cleanup, I could keep more animals now without the nightmare of daily waste management. We'd been raising livestock for a while, but had only gotten a few eggs so far. More animals meant more food long-term. Excited, I rushed out of the space to find Lu Feng and share the good news. Lu Feng and I agreed that the fewer people who know about our household, the better. When the neighbors came to survey residents, only Lu Cheng, Lu Ming, and Lu Li would show their faces. Lu Feng looked too similar to Lu Li from a distance, and I couldn't risk someone connecting me to the car from the other night. The next morning, we heard banging on the iron gate at the stairwell. Lu Cheng and Lu Ming went out to handle it. Through the door, I could hear a whole crowd on the stairs, chattering, complaining about our gate blocking, public space, and speculating that the mysterious woman from the group chat lived here. Lu Cheng opened the inner security door but kept the iron gate locked between him and the group. The oily-voiced man from the 16th floor, the one who'd eagerly offered to deliver food to the flirty wife, immediately started demanding we remove the gate. Lu Cheng ignored him completely. The leader introduced himself as Chen, from 5-02. The family Lu Li had rated 5 stars. He was polite and organized, asking how many people lived here, ages, and genders. Lu Cheng grinned and said, "What are you, the police?" Then he pointed at Lu Ming, who'd stepped out behind him looking like a wall of muscle, and claimed his brother has paranoid delusions. That's why they installed the gate. Nobody could tell if he was joking. When they kept pushing, Luli came out with a cold stare that silenced everyone. They'd also glimpsed the row of punching bags hanging in our corridor through the cracked door. Luli snapped at Lu Cheng about unfinished training and went back inside. Lu Ming followed wordlessly. Lu Cheng gave them the story. "Just a few guys, one household. Don't bother us." Chen quickly showed him the building group chat QR code. Lu Cheng scanned it, exactly as Lu Qing had predicted someone would invite him in, then shut the door in their faces. Left standing on the stairs, the group exchanged uneasy looks. Chen told them he wasn't sure how many of us there really were, but we clearly weren't people to mess with. Even the oily man from the 16th floor kept his mouth shut. As they filed downstairs, one woman, the daughter from 14-02, paused and looked back at our door with a thoughtful expression before heading down. Life settled into a routine. The boiling rain hit 70 degrees Celsius, and floodwater reached the 3rd floor. The woman whose son died had to abandon her apartment. Neighbors said they could smell the body rotting inside. She begged for shelter in the group chat, and eventually the elderly couple on the 7th floor took her in. The newlywed couple on the 5th floor begged for food again, but nobody responded this time. After weeks of extreme heat and rain, everyone was running low. Older people like my in-laws tend to keep food stocked, but younger people live meal to meal, ordering takeout, buying only what they need. Now there's no takeout, no stores, and money means nothing. Phone service still barely worked, but emergency lines were useless. Police can't get out any more than we can. I remembered that in my past life, government rescue came about a month into the rain, after the water temperature peaked. That would be any day now, but it wouldn't help much. The real threat isn't just hunger, it's heat stroke. Many elderly people and children can't survive these temperatures, even with air conditioning. And once the power goes out, things will get much worse. The building's group chat became a soap opera. The flirty wife from 5-01 had gotten involved with the man from 16-01, the one who'd eagerly offered to bring her food. His girlfriend found out and started a vicious fight in the chat. The wife from 5-01 fired back just as hard. Both husbands stayed completely silent. My mother-in-law was disgusted. She said any man who can't control himself should just be chopped off. Every man in the room crossed his legs. The argument kept expanding. More women jumped in than their husbands. Eventually, almost every household was involved, arguing, pretending to mediate, or stirring things up. The green tea girl from 6-01 was the worst, sweetly telling both sides they were wrong while fanning the flames. The career woman from 14-02 lectured about female independence. The man from 7-02 pretended to play peacemaker, while clearly enjoying the drama. Lu Cheng sighed and said, "3 women really do make a circus." I threw an orange at his head. He caught it, peeled it, and ate it with a blissful expression, probably the only person in this building still eating fresh fruit. Then I noticed a friend request pop up on his phone. It was from the girl on 6-01, Zhang Weiwei. I tossed the phone to Lu Cheng with a grin. He stared at the screen, bewildered. Why is she adding me? I rolled my eyes when Lu Cheng asked why the girl from 6-01 was adding him. Luli told him to accept and see what she wanted. The moment he accepted, she messaged, "Hey there." Lu Cheng froze with everyone staring over his shoulder, so he just typed, "Hi." She asked if the 3 guys upstairs had food. I was disappointed, just another person begging for scraps. But then she changed her approach. She said she and her roommate actually had plenty of snacks stockpiled, and they wouldn't spoil easily. That got my attention. I grabbed Lu Cheng's phone and started typing for him. I asked bluntly what she wanted from us. She said 2 girls living alone wasn't safe. Before I could respond, she went further. "You 3 don't have girlfriends, right? My roommate and I don't have boyfriends either." Every single man in the room made a face. Then Luli took the phone and typed something sharp. No boyfriend or no man? I didn't even understand the difference, but Lu Feng just smiled knowingly.
She sent a video call. Liuli and suorat privatelli.
I couldn't see her face but listened to her voice, completely different from the cutesy act she'd put on in the group chat. Much more normal, direct. When Luli asked if she was an actress, she calmly replied that women have many sides and they choose which one to show depending on the situation. I found myself nodding. I was starting to like this girl. Luli pressed her on whether her roommate was truly on board with this arrangement. Zhang Weiwei hesitated, glanced at her friend, and said the roommate was shy. Luli cut her off. He said he didn't need someone making decisions for someone else who wouldn't even show her face. Then he told her plainly, "We don't need women," and hung up. I was stunned. They'd been having a good conversation. But Lu Feng explained, Zhang Weiwei herself was smart and brave, but her roommate hiding in the background was a red flag. If that girl wasn't willing to stand up and speak for herself, taking them both in would be inviting trouble. My mother-in-law asked Li directly if he was interested in the girl. 9 pairs of eyes, including 2 confused little ones, stared at him. He said no with perfect composure. My father-in-law said if he was interested, he should get to know her carefully.
If not, don't lead her on.
Everyone agreed. This wasn't the time for romance, but if something real came along, we didn't want Lu Li to miss it either. Lu Chung and the other 2 bachelors declared, long live being single. While everyone was busy, I quietly tested my mental powers on Lu Li. That's when I noticed something new. His emotional waves had color now. I sat up straight, startled. My ability had upgraded. I'd been practicing my mental powers every night before bed, and they'd definitely grown stronger. During the population survey, I could sense 9 people on the stairs without even trying, 6 men, 3 women. But I'd avoided scanning my own family because it felt like invading their privacy. Today, curiosity got the better of me. I started with the easiest targets, my kids. Children have open, unguarded minds. Both showed green waves. Xiao Yu's green was pure and bright. He was completely absorbed in his cartoon, purely happy. Xiao Jin's green was lighter with hints of purple. He was watching the show, but kept glancing at us adults. Green meant happiness. Purple probably meant curiosity. I grabbed my phone and started recording colors in my notes app. Lu Feng saw what I was writing and looked at me with a flesh-colored wave, thinking, maybe confused. When he realized I was reading his emotions, a streak of pink-red appeared, shock. Then gray crept in, worry about having no secrets from me. He whispered, "Do you have mind-reading powers now?" I shook my head. "I can only sense emotions through colors, not actual thoughts." He relaxed visibly. Then his waves turned pinkish-green. I asked what he was thinking. He stared at the ceiling and refused to answer. I wrote, "Pink-green equals," in my notes. He looked miserable. My in-laws showed rosy red waves as they fussed over Lu Li. That seemed like caring. My mother-in-law had some gray mixed in worry. My father-in-law had flesh tones, probably thoughtful. Lu Li was interesting. He seemed to sense my probing slightly, which created a small resistance. When I deliberately scanned Lu Feng again, he tensed up too, and the reading became harder. So people who are alert or defensive are harder to read. The strength of the resistance depends on both their mental guard and my own power level. Lu Chung was the easiest. His waves were blazing green while he whispered and giggled with the others about Lu Li and the girl. He was absolutely delighted by the gossip. All 3 guys had traces of gold in their waves, plus Lu Qing showed some pink-white. I had no idea what those colors meant, so I just logged everything. Lu Feng grabbed my phone and stared at my growing list of color codes. He muttered something about finally understanding why women's lipstick comes in 1,000 shades. I snatched my phone back, thrilled with my new ability. I wanted to run around scanning everyone I could find. For now, my family's constantly shifting moods would give me plenty of practice. Everyone in the room suddenly shivered without knowing why. Lu Feng shivered hardest. Over the following days, I threw myself into practicing my emotion reading ability. I mapped out most common colors: green for happiness, gray for worry, pink-red for shock, purple for curiosity, rosy red for caring, and so on. The pink-green that Lu Feng had shown? That turned out to mean embarrassment. I won't go into how I confirmed that. I kept this power secret from everyone except Lu Feng. I was still figuring it out myself. I tested my range by sneaking down to the 20th floor. From there, I could sense people on the 16th floor, about a 10-meter range for detecting someone's presence. But I needed to get within one floor to actually see their emotional colors. I also noticed that on the 14th floor, one of the four people had an extremely faint life force. Probably the elderly grandfather, nearly 80 years old. Surviving this long in these conditions was already remarkable. By early September, the rain temperature started dropping. The men tested our thickest rain gear. It was hot but no longer scalding. They were itching to go out. I told them government rescue should arrive within a day or two. We planned our next supply run for after the rescue came, when other people would also be moving around, and we'd be less conspicuous. Lu Feng wanted to revisit the farm for more livestock. Luli suggested fuel and jade instead of food, since everyone else would be rushing to supermarkets. I named 3 jade markets in the city. Lu Qing suggested a wholesale market for miscellaneous items we might have missed. Lu Cheng, ever the car enthusiast, pointed out that a luxury car show had been set up at a downtown building before the disaster. Expensive cars stored on upper floors, above the waterline. The next morning, the official notice came. Rescue teams would arrive at 10 to evacuate flooded residents and distribute supplies. 2 pounds of rice and 1 pound of vegetables per person, with valid ID. The group chat erupted. Some people were grateful. Others cursed the government for taking so long. I thought that was unfair. This disaster hit the entire country, maybe the entire world. Officials are human too. Other regions had mudslides, and worse. Our city with just flooding and hot rain was probably low priority. We decided not to take advantage. We had more than enough food. Lu Cheng, Lu Ming, and Luli would go down to collect a token amount, just enough to maintain our cover as 3 guys with nothing special going on. We'd been careful about cooking smells too, keeping all windows sealed when making anything fragrant. In a building where people were running out of food, the smell of a real meal would bring unwanted attention fast. The rescue workers arrived in inflatable boats, wearing full-body fishermen's suits with only their eyes showing. One team registered people who needed evacuation. The other handed out supplies. The supply side was simple, 1 ID, 1 portion, no time to verify identities. The evacuation side was chaos. The 4th floor family wanted details about the shelter. Others demanded to know when the rain would stop and whether the water would keep rising. The workers were low-level staff who didn't have any of those answers. I watched the rescue from our window with the kids. We were high enough that nobody would notice 3 little heads peeking down. It felt good to see people moving around again after weeks of silence. Lu Li, Lu Cheng, and Lu Ming went down to collect our token rations and gather information. When they came back, Lu Cheng reported that the grandfather from 14-02 had passed away. His family wanted the rescue team to take his body for cremation, but other people on the boat refused to ride with the corpse. They told the family to just throw him in the water. The daughter from that family lost her temper. I felt sad. I'd sensed his fading life force just yesterday. Lu Cheng also mentioned that Zhang Weiwei's roommate had left with the rescue team to look for her parents. Zhang Weiwei didn't go with her, didn't try to stop her, and didn't even see her off. That surprised me. I glanced at Luli while gossiping with Lu Cheng about it, and Luli looked uncomfortable, like he knew he was being watched. Lu Feng, meanwhile, was calmly peeling a pomelo with the kids, completely ignoring my antics. Lu Qing had gotten useful information by slipping a pack of cigarettes to a rescue worker. This disaster was global. Our region was relatively stable compared to the mountainous north, where landslides and mudslides were constant. The government was prioritizing those areas. He also learned that the state was building major bases and relocating leaders and scientists to them. I knew from my past life that there were 4 national bases, but they were all far away and only for important people. Our family, a bunch of ordinary folks without advanced degrees or special skills, had no chance of getting in. We'd stick to taking care of ourselves. After the rescue visit, the power finally died. The internet went with it. This was the moment panic truly set in for most people. In my past life, losing communication was what broke me. feeling cut off from the entire world with no information and no one to turn to. That fear had driven me to follow the evacuation to the base, where things turned out even worse. This time, we simply switched on our solar generators. Life continued normally for us. The only thing I missed was reading the group chat drama. We planned our next outing. Jade markets were the top priority. We needed the space upgraded before collecting cars, fuel, or animals. I'd go disguised as Lu Cheng since we're similar in build, along with Lu Feng and Lu Ming. The others would stay home and plan routes for fuel stations using the offline maps I downloaded. Before dawn, the three of us carried a rubber raft downstairs and set off across the dark floodwater, planning to switch to a faster motorized boat once we were far from anyone who might notice. We set out before dawn, but ran into the family from 14-02 right away. They were returning in a rubber raft with the grandfather's ashes and a boat full of supplies. The daughter, Wang Zilan, looked exhausted but managed to smile. Lu Ming did all the talking since Lu Feng, and I couldn't risk being recognized by our voices. What I didn't realize was that Lu Feng had instinctively lifted me down into the raft, a dead giveaway that one of us wasn't a man. Wang Zilan noticed. She told her parents later that the people on the top floor weren't who they appeared to be and not to mess with us. We switched to our motorized boat once we were far enough away and headed for the jade markets. The first one, a popular jade trading center, was completely underwater. Not even the roof was visible. Lu Feng offered to dive down with our scuba gear, but I said no. One person searching underwater would take forever. Not worth the risk. The second place, a mineral and gemstone market, had a few floors above water. Lu Ming smashed a window with a hammer. Honestly, that hammer suited him as a weapon. Inside we found raw, uncut stones. We couldn't tell which ones contained jade, so we just took everything and let my space sort out. The real prize was the International Jade City. It sat on higher ground with a raised foundation, so only the first floor was flooded. The remaining 10+ floors were packed with cut jade, real, quality pieces, not the cheap retail stuff. The higher we climbed, the better the jade got. The top floors had hand-carved masterpieces priced at over 100,000 yuan each. I could feel my space reacting with every load I absorbed. We went from wide-eyed excitement on the first floor to barely glancing at pieces worth a fortune by the end. When you're shoveling jade into a magical pocket dimension, even precious stones start looking ordinary. We stopped for a meal, hot food from my storage room, as fresh as the moment my mother-in-law cooked it. Each of us cracked open an ice-cold soda. Lu Ming finally understood why Lu Cheng always said following me meant eating well. By the time we finished sweeping the last floors, it was dark. With no electricity anywhere, the city was pitch black, dangerous conditions that bring out the worst in people. We slipped home quietly through the darkness. Nobody knew we'd been out except the family from 14-02. My space had upgraded massively from all that jade. The land stretched so far I couldn't see the edges anymore. I rode an electric bicycle around the perimeter. It took 30 minutes. The small hill had become a real mountain. The house's second floor was now luxuriously finished with appliances, laid out as one big open room. I turned it into a playground for the kids. The spring water now lasted 12 hours outside the storage room, and my mental powers had grown significantly. I could now sense people within 20 meters, meaning I could detect the couple on the 16th floor from our apartment. I'd also gained a new ability, telekinesis. I could move objects with my mind outside the space, though I could barely control it yet. And my emotion reading had become so strong that mild mental defenses like Lu Li's no longer slowed me down at all. After a day of rest, Lu Cheng, Lu Li, and I headed out to find vehicles. Lu Cheng turned out to be a secret luxury car fanatic. He led us straight to a car exhibition in a downtown high-rise. The first floor was all sports cars, Porsches, Maseratis, Ferraris. Beautiful but useless in an apocalypse. Low clearance, no off-road capability. On flooded, destroyed roads full of zombies. They'd be scrap metal. Lu Cheng stroked them longingly, but didn't ask me to collect any. He knew better. The next floor up was full of customized RVs, far superior to the one we'd bought and modified ourselves. They had bulletproof glass and blast-proof tires already installed. Luli looked annoyed that he'd wasted money on our RV when these existed. I collected them all without being asked. Even if we never drove them, we could use them as portable shelters. Then Lu Cheng ran ahead and started screaming. On the top floor sat a Knight 15, a Canadian-made armored SUV. Luli's eyes went wide. He explained it was basically a civilian tank, ranked just below the Conquest Knight and Razvani tank in defensive capability. In China, you needed assets over 5 million yuan just to qualify to buy one. I reached out to absorb it, then hesitated when Luli mentioned it burns 58 liters per 100 kilometers. Our family SUV uses 11. This beast drinks 5 times more fuel. Luli laughed and told me to take it anyway. We might need an armored vehicle someday. I collected it along with several other high-end off-road vehicles on the same floor. Lu Cheng was over the moon. Then I pulled out hot meals and cold drinks from my space, and he got even happier. Before leaving, we discovered a parts warehouse stocked with original tires and spare components. With the guy's car modification skills, these would keep our fleet running for years. Not a bad day at all. After the car exhibition, it was only midday, so we headed for nearby gas stations. They were completely underwater, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I put on diving gear despite Luli's concerns. He insisted on coming with me. We dove down about 4 or 5 meters to the station floor. There were no above-ground storage tanks, but Luli found something better. Underground fuel reservoirs connected to the pumps. He pointed at the access hatches, and I understood immediately. I could absorb the entire tanks into my space. I touched the first one, concentrated for about 30 seconds, and it worked. We collected all the tanks from that station. 4 huge reservoirs, 20 cubic meters each. That's 80,000 liters of fuel, enough for our family SUV to drive over 700,000 kilometers. We hit 2 more stations before my stamina gave out, and Luli called it a day. We paddled back to our building before dark. I could sense eyes watching us from various floors, but we'd prepared for that. Each of us carried a backpack and had scattered some random supplies on the raft to make it look like a modest haul. As we climbed the stairs past the 5th floor, I sensed something ahead. On the 6th floor landing, a man had a woman pinned against the wall, trying to force himself on her. She was struggling and crying. His greasy voice was calling her horrible names. The 3 of us paused at the corner. We didn't want to get involved in something we didn't understand. In times like these, playing hero can backfire badly. We exchanged glances, debating silently. Then the woman stabbed him with an eyebrow razor. It barely broke skin, but he slapped her so hard, she fell to the ground. When he lunged at her again, something in me snapped. I charged up and kicked him as hard as I could right between his legs. He screamed like a dying pig. Luli and Lu Cheng both winced. That's a pain only men can truly imagine. But all those weeks of training and spring water hadn't been for nothing. My legs were strong now. Luli and Lu Cheng moved in to stand between the man and me. Then Luli looked down at the girl on the ground and frowned. Zhang Weiwei? I blinked. It was the girl from 6-01. Zhang Weiwei recognized Luli's voice despite the mask. She also figured out that the person who kicked the man was a woman. Men don't usually aim there in a fight. I helped her up, and she thanked me quietly. The man's girlfriend from the 16th floor came rushing down, screaming. When she saw him on the ground, she demanded to know who did it. I told her bluntly that if her husband couldn't control himself, I'd be happy to help manage the problem. She was furious, but could tell exactly what had happened. She turned her rage toward Zhang Weiwei instead, trying to grab her. Luli caught the woman's wrist and flung her aside. She landed right on her boyfriend's injured area. Another scream echoed through the building. The cuckolded husband from 5-01 appeared and made a mocking comment, which set off another screaming match between the women. Luli silenced everyone with a single shout. He told the man on the ground that the next time we catch him forcing himself on a woman, we won't just kick, we'll cut. He flashed a knife to make the point. Everyone on the stairwell went quiet. Before leaving, I gave Zhang Weiwei a spring-loaded knife from my space. I told her the eyebrow razor was useless, and that if any man tried that again, She should stab first and ask questions later. Lu Feng had heard my voice from upstairs and came running down, grabbing me protectively. That meant our whole group was now exposed. Everyone on the stairwell could count us. So much for staying hidden. Back home, I curled up against Lu Feng, embarrassed. I was the one who'd insisted on laying low, and now I'd blown our cover spectacularly. My mother-in-law cheered and said I did the right thing. Luli started to scold me, but before he could even finish his first sentence, Lu Feng jumped to my defense. Luli snapped at everyone to shut up. He wasn't saying I was wrong, just that it shouldn't have been me out front like that. I told him quietly that I couldn't help it. Zhang Weiwei, with that tiny razor in her hand, looked exactly like me the first time I killed a man, except I'd had a fruit knife. The room went silent. Lu Feng pressed my head into his chest and told Lu Li to stop asking questions. What's done is done. Now we needed to figure out what to do next. The room went quiet after Lu Feng told Lu Li to drop it. Lu Cheng broke the tension, pointing out that our exposure actually worked as intimidation. Now the whole building knows not to mess with us. Lu Feng agreed. As long as nobody discovers we have elderly people and children up here, we're fine. Several grown men living on the top floor with punching bags and knives? Nobody's going to come looking for trouble. Lu Li calmed down and admitted it wasn't as bad as he'd first reacted. He sent Lu Feng to take me to rest. Lu Feng squeezed my nose and told me not to overthink things, then left me alone. Lying in bed, I sorted through my feelings. I knew I'd do the same thing again, if it happened tomorrow. I'm not the cold, ruthless survivor from those apocalypse novels, the type who watches people die without blinking. I went through 2 years of hell, but nobody betrayed me. Nobody stabbed me in the back. I just didn't have powers, didn't have help, and barely survived. I don't have deep grudges against the world. I was just tired. But I'm not a saint either. I wasn't going to jump in for just anyone. What made me act was watching Zhang Weiwei fight back with that tiny razor. She reminded me of myself, alone, outmatched, but refusing to give in. If she hadn't resisted on her own, I wouldn't have stepped in. You have to be willing to save yourself before anyone else can help you. I'd been reading her emotions the whole time. When I helped her up, I saw flickers of gold, the color of gratitude and trust. When she realized Lu Li might have a wife, her color shifted to embarrassment. When Lu Li protected her, I saw the soft orange of envy, the same shade Lu Qing shows when he watches Lu Feng and me together. That girl definitely has feelings for Lu Li. And based on his behavior today, getting so worked up over something that wasn't really that serious, I suspect he's not as indifferent as he claims. I give it time before he's chasing after her. As for the man from the 16th floor, I kicked him hard enough that without medicine, he might not recover properly. He's the type who only bullies women who are alone. He won't dare try anything again. I was completely drained from diving all afternoon. Absorbing those massive fuel tanks underwater had pushed both my body and mind to their limits. I fell asleep the moment I hit the bed. Lu Feng checked on me and reported back that I was fine. Lu Li apologized to him, saying he'd overreacted without understanding what happened. Lu Feng waved it off and said I wasn't the type to hold a grudge. If I'd been upset, I would have argued on the spot. My mother-in-law nodded firmly. She knows me well. I say what I think and never play games. That's exactly why they've always liked me. Everyone smiled, and the tension from the evening finally dissolved. We kept going out on supply runs over the following days. We found stray livestock on hillsides near the flooded village, raided office buildings where we discovered amazing things like temperature-regulating clothing from a tech company, and generally kept busy. I'd visibly lost weight from all the activity, which I was fine with. I'd been trying to lose my post-baby weight for years. My mother-in-law was less pleased and kept cooking me extra food. More people started venturing out on the floodwater now that food was running low. Since this is an inland city, nobody owned boats. People got creative, door panels as rafts, baby bathtubs, even sitting in buckets. But with more people out came more trouble. Thugs camped near the complex entrance, robbing anyone who passed. People fell into the water during struggles, and if they couldn't swim, they drowned. Bloated bodies floating by became so common that people just pushed them aside with their paddles, without flinching. One morning, a group of neighbors knocked on our door. Chun from 5-02 led them, along with the woman from the third floor, the man from 4-02 who'd relocated to 6-02, the woman from 7-02, and Zhang Weiwei standing reluctantly in the back. Chun awkwardly asked if we wanted to team up to find supplies together. What he really meant was they needed to borrow our rubber raft. They had no way to get out on the water. The third-floor woman shoved Chun aside and said it bluntly. "We want to borrow your boat." Then she pointed her finger through the gate at Lu Cheng, lecturing him about neighborly duty and how we eat well every day without sharing. Lu Cheng whipped out his knife and sliced off her fingertip in one motion. She screamed. Blood splattered on Chen's face. I wasn't fazed. In the apocalypse, I'd seen much worse. Lu Cheng smiled coldly and said, "I really hate people pointing at me." Everyone backed away. But the woman from 7-02 didn't. She dropped to her knees and begged. Her little boy had a fever, and they had no medicine. She needed a boat to go find some. My whole body went rigid. In my past life, her child died around this time. This was the woman who'd given Xiaoyu bread when he was starving. Lu Feng squeezed my hand, telling me to stay calm. Lu Li opened the iron gate. Everyone flinched backward except the kneeling woman. He ignored her and spoke directly to Chen. He said we'd lend the boat, no rush returning it, but in exchange, they'd give us a share of whatever supplies they found. Consider it rent. Chen agreed instantly. Nobody dared object. Without a boat, they couldn't go anywhere. When the neighbors left with our rubber raft, I secretly slipped a bottle of spring water to the woman from 7-02. I told her the tap water might be contaminated, and this clean water could help her sick child. It was all I could safely do. Giving actual medicine would invite endless demands. Luckily, her child recovered, whether from the water or medicine she found outside. The neighbors were supposed to share their finds with us as rent for the boat, but they started cheating, giving less and less until they stopped entirely. Lu Li went down, dug through their stash, and took the boat back. We didn't need their scraps, but we couldn't let them think we were pushovers. A few days later, I was reorganizing animals in my space when I noticed one of our rabbits looked bigger around the middle. I brought it out to my mother-in-law. She felt its belly and confirmed it was pregnant. So the market seller hadn't lied about having one male and one female after all. Then something strange happened. Xiao Jin came running over and said I was pulling the rabbit's fur, and it was crying in pain. I assumed he was just being sweet, but then he started talking to the rabbit in a serious, focused way, and it didn't look like a child playing pretend. He's almost 10. He's past the age of having imaginary conversations with animals. I checked the calendar. Late November. The rain had stopped over 2 weeks ago. Water was slowly receding. In about half a month, zombies would appear. That meant the virus was already spreading, and abilities might already be emerging in people just too faint for anyone to notice yet. I asked Xiao Jin directly if he could understand the rabbit. He nodded happily and said the rabbit told him she has babies inside her. He said he'd started hearing animals recently but couldn't understand them before. My heart raced. I took him into the space to test further. When a cow mooed loudly, I asked if he knew what it said. He shook his head, confused. I frowned. Was I wrong about this being an ability? I tested Xiao Jin further in the space. When Xiaoyu chased the chickens around the garden, Xiao Jin's eyes lit up. He said he could hear the chickens complaining. The little bean is back again. I won't be able to lay eggs for 2 days, so that's why egg production dropped every time Xiaoyu visited. Mystery solved. Xiao Jin could hear small animals but not large ones yet. The cow's mooing was just noise to him. His ability to communicate with animals was real, but still weak. I told him that as it grows stronger, he'll be able to understand all animals and eventually command them. He was thrilled and immediately asked if he could finally have a dog. That boy has wanted a dog for years. I'd always refused because raising 2 kids was hard enough without adding a pet. But looking at his hopeful face, I gave in and said we'd find one when we could. Back in the living room, the men were sitting around drinking water after training. I couldn't resist announcing. Xiao Jin already has an ability. You grown men are falling behind. Lu Feng spat water everywhere. Lu Cheng had learned to dodge by now. Then Lu Feng jumped up and said something completely inappropriate about proving how capable he is. I started kicking him. He dodged and turned it into a sparring session, which was actually good practice. He's the weakest fighter among the men since he spent years in an office being chauffeured everywhere. When I caught my breath, Lu Cheng asked if animal communication was really useful. I explained. After the apocalypse, animals mutate and become powerful. Xiao Jin's ability will evolve too. Eventually, he'll be able to command mutated beasts. While the rest of you are fighting zombies hand-to-hand, Xiao Jin will be sitting safely somewhere, directing an army of creatures with a wave of his finger. The room went dead silent. Every single man looked depressed. My mother-in-law hugged Xiao Jin and crowed, "My brilliant grandson. You're all useless compared to him." The men had lost count of how many times today they'd been told they weren't good enough. Xiao Jin blushed. He could barely understand a rabbit right now, let alone command an army. I softened things by explaining his body is young and the power needs time to grow. Lu Feng gave me a look that promised he'd be proving himself tonight. I shivered and started considering whether I should sleep inside my space instead. The men immediately crowded around Xiao Jin, begging him to explain how his ability appeared. The poor boy had no idea. He just suddenly heard the rabbit talking. He couldn't help them. Then my mother-in-law surprised everyone. She asked me to check if something she'd noticed was an ability too. She grabbed a knife. Lu Cheng screamed, thinking she was coming for them, and Lu Feng hid behind me. Then she gritted her teeth and cut her own finger. Before anyone could grab a tissue, the wound sealed itself shut. Right before our eyes, the skin healed completely, leaving nothing but a smear of blood. I wiped it clean and noticed something else. Her hands looked younger. The rough calluses and bulging veins from decades of housework were gone. Her face had fewer wrinkles too. She looked years younger. It was a healing ability, and it was already working on her body from the inside out. I noticed changes in myself too, things Lu Feng had been commenting on recently. The spring water and abilities were quietly restoring us. I explained that her power was self-healing for now, like a support character in a video game. To test whether she could heal others, Lu Li casually sliced Lu Cheng's hand and had her try. It didn't work yet. Lu Cheng whimpered for a bandage while Lu Li called him pathetic. The men were devastated. A grandmother and a 9-year-old had awakened abilities before any of them. I tried to comfort them by suggesting that maybe stronger abilities take longer to emerge. They're building up power before exploding. That might actually be true. It worked. Every single man in the house went into overdrive, training like possessed teenagers, secretly competing to see who'd awaken first and whose power would be strongest. They were over 200 years old combined, but acting like 18-year-olds. Xiao Jin took his new role seriously too. I put him in charge of exercising Xiao Yu inside the space, where both boys chased animals around all day. Xiao Yu's little legs got faster every week. The men watched nervously, terrified that the toddler might develop an ability next and humiliate them completely. Their training intensity doubled, and their sparring sessions in the hallway became so violent you could hear screaming echoing through the building at all hours. Lu Feng channeled his competitive energy in other ways too, mainly toward proving to me how very capable he is. Between the spring water and the abilities quietly improving everyone's bodies, I'll admit things had gotten better in certain departments. He kept hinting about trying for a daughter. I pretended not to hear him.